Hi lovelies! This is another tutorial breaking down one of my oil pastel drawings which I post on my Instagram and TikTok. Like always, I'll be using my gallery by Soft Oil Pastels. They're honestly my favorite brand when it comes to oil pastels, and I especially love their limited 12 color set. To start off, I'll just go ahead and do a quick sketch of what I want to draw. I usually skip this part in the tutorial just because I don't really think it's helpful at all. That's because I honestly just freehand the sketch, so it's not useful at all since this is supposed to be a tutorial and I don't actually explain or show how I draw the sketch, but I do have a separate video on how I sketch. It's just that over time I start visualizing the proportions and shapes in my mind so that I can easily freehand the sketch without needing guidelines. However, because the sketching tutorial I have up is a bit old, I'm planning to film another more recent sketching tutorial, but it might take a short while since I'm hoping to upload a tutorial that will focus on drawing with coloring pencils, which will also have breakdown and explain color theory more. So keep an eye out for that tutorial. When sketching, I try to stick to clean, sharp lines. This just makes it easier when lightly erasing the sketch before using oil pastels. I also prefer to sketch with a russet or brown coloring pencil so that the graphite from regular pencils doesn't interfere with the colors from the pastels and end up making the colors look muddy. Also, for areas like the hair, I focus on blocking in the overall shape rather than drawing every strand of hair, since it will all be covered up by the pastels anyways, so there's really just no point in drawing every detail in the sketch. I'll then go in and erase the sketch slightly, just until I can barely see it. This is so that it doesn't affect any of the colors from the pastels. To start the coloring process, I work from dark to light. So I'll start with the black pastel and I'll outline the shape of the eyes. I like to start with the eyes specifically because they're where most of the details are going to be focused on. It's because I like them to be the center point of my drawings, because the eyes reflect the most emotion, so they set the overall mood of the drawing. When coloring, I work from dark to light, so I go in next with the russet shade around the iris and in the corners of the eye. And I'm barely applying any pressure, just enough for the color to show. I'll go back again with the black pastel to outline the iris. Because it's hard to control where the colors go with thick pastels, I'll then fill in the whites of the eye with the white pastel, using one of the broken white pastel pieces. To be honest, this is mainly because I accidentally crushed my white pastel, but it also makes it easier to do the details. So I'm using what I can because I can't be bothered to buy another set until I finish this one first. I'll go over the iris again with the russet pastel to create more depth to the eyes before going back in with the black pastel to outline the eye once more so that it can emphasize that the eyes are the main subject of the drawing. I'm also using the pastel at an angle just so I can make sure the colors aren't going everywhere. Before using the pastels, I make sure I wipe them on a tissue paper so that any pigment that previously stuck to it won't transfer to the drawing. Using the ochre shade, I'll start to expand the drawing outwards from the eye, so I'll work my way around the eye with it, making sure I'm not applying too much pressure so that the black outline of the eyes can blend with the ochre shade, creating or making the transition from the eyes to the skin softer. To add some color to the area around the eyes, I'll use the russet shade just underneath the eyes. The atmosphere of this drawing is going to be really warm, so you'll see me using the Oil Pastel quite frequently. In this specific drawing, I'll use it to blend any undertones, like the russet under the eyes, as well as the strands of hair near the face. If I notice that the ochre overpowered the undertones, I'll lightly go over it with the previous color. The same thing goes for if the undertone overpowers the ochre shade. To brighten the face without losing that warmth from the face, I'll go in lightly with the yellow pastel. For lighter areas like the eyelids and inner corners of the eye, I'll use the salmon pastel because I want those areas to be light but not complete highlights, which is why I don't use white here. I'll just repeat this layering process with the ochre pastel to fix any areas that I think are too light from the salmon pastel. For the reflecting highlight in the eye, I'll use a broken piece of white pastel and carefully line it where I want it to be. I'll also use it to brighten up the whites of the eye a bit more. I'll extend the colors outwards from the eye by alternating between the yellow and salmon pastels. I'll then fill in the eyebrows using the black pastel. Then once again blend the black pastel using the ochre pastel, making sure I'm wiping the pastel constantly to avoid any pigment that's stuck to it from transferring to the drawing. I'll do the same thing with the salmon pastel to make sure that colors are blended well. I'll repeat the same process of layering the colors to fill in the forehead. Using the ochre, I'll jack the color down from the bridge of the nose. I'll fill in the nostrils using the black pastel. It doesn't matter if you draw them too thick, you can always go back and fix it when layering the other colors. When I want to darken areas without using black, I always start with a complementary color of the color I'll use next. In this case, it'll be emerald green. When laying the rest over the green, it creates this just darker shade that adds more depth rather than looking ashy from using black as the undertone. I'll go in and fix any mistakes I did when using the thick pastels, and I do so by layering the colors over and over until I'm satisfied. To then connect the shadows with the main tone of the face, I'll use the ochre pastel on the nose. For the highlights, like I mentioned before, I'll alternate between the salmon and yellow pastel, blending with the ochre when necessary. To emphasize the highlights, I'll then go over them with the white pastel, and I'll once again repeat this whole process of layering to make sure the colors are all blended well to get this smooth final look. cheek and jaw, I like to start with putting the middle shade first. This helps me make sure the highlights aren't too bright and the shadows aren't too dark. Using the ochre as base, I'll start to lighten it up using the salmon pastel, making sure I'm not pressing too hard on the pastel. This is because the salmon here represents the reflecting light on the face. I'll tone the reflection down a bit by going over it with the ochre before doing the highlights on the cheekbone. Another reminder to make sure you wipe your pastels or else they'll transfer unwanted pigment on the drawing. To fix this, I just go over the mistake with the pastel, making sure to wipe the pastel between every stroke. Now that the face is almost done, I like to go back in with the white pastel to brighten up some of the highlights. To fix any heavy contrast between the midtone and the highlights, I'll use the salmon shade between both areas. I'll repeat the same process I did for the nose to do the jaw. For the lips, I like to start with black for the shadows. This is because I like the maroon or burgundy shade I get when I layer black and russet together. I'll mainly fill in the top lip since due to the light source, the top lip will be darker. I'll add a little black under the bottom lip for the shadows, then I'll use the russet shade over it, making sure to blend the black well so it's not completely visible. For the highlights on the lips, I'll use the salmon instead of yellow to follow the reddish undertone of the lips, but I'll still use white for heavy highlights. For the neck, I'll basically do the same as the jaw, but since less highlights hit the neck, I'll also use black to darken the shadows even more. I wanted darker shadows for more contrast under the jaw, so I just went in with the black pastel in the areas I wanted darker before blending it out with the ochre pastel. For the hair, I'll just start with black to fill in the strands of hair near the face and hairline, and then I'm also using the pastel at an angle so that I can be a bit more accurate. To blend the strands, I use a mixture of russet and ochre, just repeating that process until I'm happy with it. I'll add any additional strands of hair I want before blending them out. I'll use the salmon pastel to plot where I want the highlights to be. I'll then go over them with the russet to add some color to the hair. Using the black, I'll fill in the other side of the hair, leaving a small gap between the black and the face where I'll use the salmon and ochre pastel to blend the face with the hair. This will help achieve that soft drawing look. In between the strands of hair, I use the ochre to colour in the light peeking through the gaps in the strands of hair. I also use the white pastel to emphasize the light reflecting on the hair. I once again repeat the same skin process for the ear. Not focusing too much on details because I want the face to be the main subject of the drawing. I'll then fill in the rest of the hair using the black pastel. I'll go in and map out the highlights using the salmon again before adding colour to the ochre pastel. Using the black pastel, I'll shade in the outline of the clothes as well as the shadows from the hand. blend the shadows a bit with the ochre to maintain the soft look. The hand will follow the same process as the skin. I'll alternate between black, russet, ochre, and white for the background. This is the only time I'll purposely use my fingers to blend. This is because the background isn't the main subject of the drawing, and so I don't mind if the colors fade or become murky. I'll start to add some definition to the background by using different colors to imitate objects in the back. I'll also add some hair strands and blend them out with my fingers. For the clothes, I'll switch between green, ochre, and black to create the military green for the jacket. For the folds, I'm generally just doing them randomly. They don't have to be accurate. this is how it turned out. I hope this tutorial was easy to follow along. Please do let me know if there are anything I should improve or focus on. That's all. Bye bye.